Welcome to this explainer. If you're a current or future band director, you already know the podium is an incredibly demanding place. You're constantly having to diagnose and fix mechanical issues across dozens of students in real time. Well, today we're skipping the dry theory. We're giving you a quick reference, actionable toolkit to master your clarinet section right from day one. We're going to transform pedagogical theory into practical habits, physical checkpoints, and auditory diagnostics that you can immediately put to use.
So here's our agenda for this explainer. We'll be looking at woodwind pedagogy and habits, building the clarinet embouchure, tone diagnostics and checkpoints, instrument tuning and registers, and finally, reeds and the clarinet family. Let's get right into it. Section 1. Woodwind pedagogy and habits. How people learn. Before we even touch the clarinet, we really need to set our foundational mindset for teaching. And this quote by Johann Heinrich Pestalozzi hits the nail on the head. People learn by doing. It sounds super obvious, right? But playing an instrument is all about complex motor skills. Kids aren't going to learn by just sitting and listening to you explain things. They literally have to physically execute the movements over and over.
And that brings us to this really interesting contrast: declarative versus procedural memory. Declarative memory is just knowing facts, like memorizing a fingering chart. Procedural memory, though, that's the actual knowing how. It's the muscle memory for forming the embouchure or actually producing a tone. As a director, it's so tempting to just talk at your students, right? You want to prioritize the facts. But your real job is to design class experiences that force them into repeated, thoughtful doing. That is exactly how you build that essential procedural memory.
To build those good procedural habits, your immediate goal should be focusing on what we call notes that reveal. Take the Chalumeau G, for example. It requires the thumb and 6 fingers. It demands that the student does more things right than wrong. If their embouchure, airstream, or hand position is off, that G just won't speak. It reveals the truth to both of you. On the flip side, you have short tube notes like thumb and 1E. Those are way too easy to make a sound on. If you emphasize short tube notes too early, you give students a false sense of competence, and bad habits spread like wildfire because the note speaks even if their posture or air is terrible.
Moving on to Section 2, building the clarinet embouchure, focusing on the physical framework.
The absolute most crucial thing here is implementing a specific, step-by-step physical checklist right from day one, before any bad motor habits can take root. You're looking for these 4 primary elements. First, head erect. Second, make sure that mouthpiece is at a 35-degree angle to the body. Third, the lower lip needs to be active and pulled against the teeth. And fourth, keep that jaw pointed downward. Having your beginners run through this exact checklist repeatedly creates organized thought and action right from the start. Now, even with a picture-perfect external setup, internal voicing issues can absolutely ruin a tone. A super common beginner issue is puffed cheeks or a flat, unrefined sound. But instead of just yelling at them to stop puffing their cheeks, fix it from the inside out. Have the student sustain a pitch and raise their tongue into a high, arched eye position. Doing this creates the correct internal voicing for the instrument, and as a brilliant biological bonus, it makes it practically impossible to puff their cheeks. It's a total game changer. Okay, Section 3, tone diagnostics and checkpoints. Let's talk about listening and checking.
This is where your observational skills on the podium really get put to the test. Here's a phenomenal tool. It's essentially a literal diagnostic scale for your classroom. Take checkpoint 4, for instance. Slurring from low F to clarion C. If a student blasts out a solid, loud, low F, which tells you their finger coverage and air are decent, but then that clarion C is suddenly a struggle, well, that tells you exactly what's failing internally. It means the embouchure is probably too loose, the lower lip is too soft, or the air is too slow. The clarion register reveals all the hidden internal mechanics of the embouchure that you just can't see from the podium.
Since band is an auditory medium, knowing exactly what to listen for is just as vital as what to look for. If you hear this huffing or puffing thu sound during articulation, that is an immediate red flag. It's an auditory symptom telling you their articulation mechanics are just too weak. Specifically, it means their tongue isn't pressing firmly enough against the teeth before they release the airstream. All right, Section 4, instrument tuning and registers, and a bit of mechanical evolution. Taking a quick step back, it's actually fascinating to see how the mechanics of this instrument evolved. The clarinet was born way back in 1690 when Johann Dunner took an instrument called the Chalumeau and added a register key to it, which raised the notes by a 12th.
It got super popular in the 1700s, which of course led to Mozart writing his iconic concerto in 1791. But get this, it wasn't until around 1850 that Hyacinthe Close and Louis-Auguste Buffet applied the modern Bohm-inspired fingering system. And that is the exact same system your students are playing today.
So, because of that register key Denner invented, the clarinet operates in 4 distinct ranges. Down at the bottom, you have the rich Chalumeau register. Moving up, you hit the throat tones, which tend to be pretty stuffy. Above that is the bright clarion register, and finally, the high register. As a director, you know that crossing the break, moving from those stuffy throat tones where barely any fingers are down, over to the clarion register that requires a ton of fingers, is absolutely one of the most critical mechanical hurdles your kids are going to face.
Finally, Section 5, Reeds and the Clarinet Family, the true engine of the tone. In the absolute chaos of a full band rehearsal, you need rapid diagnostics. So many beginners unknowingly play on reeds that are just wildly inappropriate for them. So, what happens when a kid is playing on a reed that lacks the necessary resistance? What are the auditory clues you should be listening for? The symptoms are actually pretty clear. If you hear a bright, blatty, or just a remarkably thin sound coming from the clarinet section, suspect the reed. A soft reed won't respond readily in the upper register. It makes clean, crisp tonguing incredibly frustrating, and it famously causes the pitch to trend flat. When you hear that specific combination of issues, you instantly know to suggest they step up to a harder reed, or at least rotate to a fresh one.
And hey, we can't forget that the clarinet section isn't just B-flat sopranos. When you transition a student over to the bass clarinet to flush out your ensemble sound, the fundamentals have to adapt. You can't just hand them the big horn and walk away. Bass clarinetists have to take significantly more mouthpiece into their mouth. Their embouchure needs to be way more relaxed. Honestly, it's closer to a saxophone embouchure. And crucially, they actually need a softer reed to get the proper response, especially when they're playing in the upper register.
So we've covered the mechanics, the diagnostics, and the psychology behind the instrument. But I want to leave you with a final provocative thought. As you step up onto that podium tomorrow, armed with this pedagogical toolkit, how will you shift your rehearsal from a lecture into an active laboratory? How will you stop simply talking about the clarinet and start actively building your students' procedural memory? Because at the end of the day, people learn by doing. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer.